Back to school's here, and if you're buying a laptop, consider this the ultimate buyer's guide, as I'm going to walk you through the entire process of understanding the various laptop categories that you should be even considering, go through and understanding your needs to make sure that you're buying the perfect laptop, and even give you some recommendations on how to find the perfect deal, as well as some laptops I really like and think are a perfect fit for most students. So let's go ahead and dive right into it by looking at the various categories so you can get an idea of what exactly I mean by that. See, when it comes to buying a laptop, there are really three main categories you should be considering if you're a student: Ultrabooks, MacBooks, and gaming laptops. Outside of that, I'd probably avoid anything else. Most of the other options are typically going to be on the lower end, and I would stay away from it. Chromebooks, tablets, or even the everyday PC, I would probably stay away from it. They miss out on some really incredible features that you get with things like an Ultrabook, including the fact that these are super slim, light and portable, along with they have incredible battery life, which is super important as a student. And it's something that you'll really come to appreciate when picking something up like this. The only downside with something like an Ultrabook is they are definitely not going to be the most powerful out there. They're going to be great when it comes to efficiency, including like 20 hours of battery life on this laptop right here, but they're definitely not the most powerful by any means. But we'll go ahead and get back to that in just a little bit. Next up, let's go ahead and talk about the MacBooks. MacBooks are very similar to the Ultrabooks out there on the market. They are designed to have really good battery life, a great screen, really great package. That's really what I would say the MacBook is known for, is the entire package that kind of comes with this laptop is great. Everything from the software experience, which syncs seamlessly with any other Apple devices you have, which is called the Apple ecosystem, where everything kind of just works together. Things like iCloud, your Apple Photos, Apple Music, your Notes app, your iMessages, FaceTime, they all just kind of work together seamlessly, and that's kind of why people love having a MacBook in college, along with the fact that they are built incredibly well. And like I said, it's a great package overall, not only when it comes to the design, but also when it comes to the software experience. That's why people absolutely love them. And then the last category would be gaming laptops. See, gaming laptops are going to be a very specific type of user for somebody that's going to want to pick these up. See, not only are they going to be allowing you to run games if you want to, which is kind of a nice pastime when you're in college because you will have a lot of extra time on your hands, but at the same time, they're designed to give you the most amount of performance. And that's all thanks to the fact that they have a dedicated graphics card, which I'll get to in just a minute. But what that means is they're going to be able to handle more intensive rendering tasks that something like an Ultrabook may struggle with. Now that we've talked about the various laptop categories you should be considering, let's go ahead and dive into understanding your needs when it comes to a laptop for college. Because honestly, that's exactly what you need to be thinking about. Because the last thing you want to do is buy a laptop that's underpowered where you have to replace it halfway through your academic career. And that's something I don't want you to walk away from here. So one thing I would probably start off with is to really reach out to former students, faculty, or staff and just ask, maybe your admissions counselor even, and just ask them, hey, what type of programs are we going to be running? Once you find that out, it's very easy to do a simple search of that program and figure out if it's going to be a very intensive program, if it's run through the web browser, or if it's part of the Office suite, then it's going to be a lot easier to run than something that's a very heavy program where you may need that extra power out there. But for most students, I'm going to give you a general rundown based on some generalized majors. So let's say anything in like the liberal arts college, communications, business, med, or in nursing even. Really, you're not going to be doing a lot of heavy applications. It's going to be a lot of reading and writing and doing research. What that means is you're going to be running the Microsoft Office suite and doing a lot of things through the web browser. When you're doing that, really, you're not going to need a ton of power. So unless you want to game, don't buy a gaming laptop. You'll thank me later, because the portability of an Ultrabook and the battery life of something like this, or even a low-end MacBook, is going to get you through the day every single day, and you'll never have to worry about bringing your charger along. I will also say that buying a system that is kind of more light and easy to carry around is absolutely worth it if you can, just because you're going to be walking around with this thing all day, and the extra weight is definitely going to put some strain on your shoulders if you have a backpack. So I would stay away from a gaming laptop if you're in one of those fields unless you want to game. Then if you do, maybe go for something that's kind of a thin and light gaming machine. Look at the Zephyrus lineup from Asus. Those are generally very thin and light for a gaming laptop. They definitely have a little bit of thermal issues out there, but if you do want some extra power, great option. If you want to go ahead and move into something that's going to be a little more powerful, if you ever want to get into something like video production, photo editing, and stuff like that, maybe look for something with a dedicated GPU in one of these Ultrabooks, or even go up to something like a MacBook Pro, which is going to be plenty powerful. With that said, now let's go ahead and talk about if you're in a STEM field or specifically an engineering field where you're going to be doing a lot of CAD work or 3D modeling, going through either any kind of rendering tasks, something like even photo or video editing. You may want something a little more powerful. In that case, I would say for most students, look at something like a MacBook Pro or go up to a gaming laptop. If you're going to be in CAD a lot and that's something like mechanical engineering where you're going to be doing that all day, yes, a gaming laptop may be your best friend just because of the wide availability and the cost efficiency for the performance. However, if you do still want great battery life to get you through all day, something like a MacBook Pro is going to be probably your best bet in that type of circumstance. So that kind of gives you guys a good rundown of the kind of needs that you'll have. But let's go ahead and talk about how to understand the spec sheet, because I think this is something that a lot of people overlook. So let's go ahead and dive into what everything means. So first up, I'm going to tell you some basic terms that you should be looking for as a baseline no matter what system you buy, and that's going to probably help you out the most. First up, go ahead and look for anything that has 16 gigabytes of RAM or more. That is random access memory or memory, sometimes it's listed that way. And the best way to think about that is like your short-term memory. Basically, it's how many things your computer can remember at the same time. So how many things can your system process at the same time? So what this is going to be really important for is when you have a bunch of tabs open for a research paper, or you're running multiple programs, like maybe you're going to have Excel up and a PowerPoint up, having some extra RAM and also being able to also switch to your web browser is super effective. Anything below 16 gigabytes is something you want to stay away from because it probably won't last you all 4 years of college. I will also say you can definitely go more. It's not going to hurt. It's only going to help. And if you do happen to be in one of those engineering fields, maybe look at 32 gigabytes or more. Now let's go ahead and move on to storage. 512 gigabytes of storage is the absolute minimum I would probably recommend as well. The only reason I would say 512 and not 1 terabyte these days is just because every school these days gives you a lot of cloud storage, which means any kind of documents that you have, you can save to the cloud and keep off your system, which will offload a lot of the storage needs of your system. But 512 gigabytes should be plenty to go ahead and give you enough storage where you can load any program that you want on it and be perfectly fine. If you are going to game on your laptop though, make sure you have at least 1 terabyte. That's definitely something I would highly recommend, or make sure that your laptop's at least upgradable. Now, let's go ahead and continue on. When it comes to screens actually really do matter, and I feel like a lot of people will miss out here. Just make sure that you have something over 1080p or 1080p or greater. So 1920 by 1080 is the spec you'll be looking for. Anything above that in resolution, anything larger with those two numbers is going to just be a plus. Those are going to have a little bit nicer screens, a little sharper images, and all 4 of these laptops here actually have resolutions above that, and that's why I absolutely love them. You're going to be looking at the screen all day, and being able to make out fine text is super important. Now that we have a baseline established for all the machines that we're buying, let's go ahead and talk about processors. We'll start off with the MacBooks because those are probably the simplest to understand. Right now, you can get an M2 or M3 processor, and then the various variants inside of those. My recommendation for most people is that if you're in those productivity phases, probably go with something like just the normal M3. It's the latest and greatest from Apple, which means it's going to be supported the longest, and it's going to be that great baseline if you're getting a MacBook Air. However, if you need the extra performance, you can go up to that Pro or Max lineup. Depending on your field, you may want to go up accordingly. For instance, the one I used at the end of my college career was the MacBook M2 Pro, and I absolutely love that machine. It's so fast, super efficient. But now I would probably go with the latest generation just to go ahead and have that latest performance. You can go back to the M2. It wasn't a huge jump, and if you can save enough, it may be worth it to go ahead and look at that. So that kind of gives you a base rundown of the processors from Apple, but let's go ahead and talk about PCs because this is kind of getting a little confusing these days. So when it comes to the manufacturers of processors, you're going to be looking at Intel, Snapdragon, and AMD these days. And these are all 3 really good players in the game right now, and they all have some new chips that were just released. When it comes to an Intel processor, right now, you're going to want to be looking for the latest generation, which is their new Ultra series lineup. Probably an Ultra 7 or Ultra 9 processor. That's going to give you plenty of performance and give you great longevity long term. Along with, if you do want to go back a generation, you can. Just make sure it's a 13th generation. You'll see the signature of like i7 or i9, 1355U. And when you look for that, that's a great option as well. It's just last gen. It's not going to be nearly as fast, and it does miss out on some of the additional AI features that are eventually going to come out. And when it comes to those AI features, they're very far out right now from being perfect, so I wouldn't worry about that, but it's just something to keep in mind. Next up, we have Snapdragon, who is a new player in the game. Their new X series processors, right now the laptop right here has the X Elite processor, is super fast. It's a great processor for productivity, and it's something I would probably be looking at, especially if you're looking for a solid machine that's going to be very good when it comes to battery life and really great performance for kind of those web-based applications. So anything that's in the browser or the Office suite is going to run like a dream on here, and they are super efficient. So that's why I absolutely love those. And then AMD is also a little more confusing like Intel. So really in this case, you're going to be looking at two different series of processors. The brand new AI 300 series processors just came out. So I'd be looking at a Ryzen 7 or Ryzen 9 of those, which are brand new. There's not a ton of models out there. I'll have some linked down below. But then you also can look at the last generation stuff, which would be their 8000 series lineup. So same thing, probably a Ryzen 7 or Ryzen 9, just to go ahead and give you really solid performance for your entire academic career. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the actual processors you should be looking for. And if you have questions, like always, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll go ahead and help you out there. The last thing I want to talk about are dedicated graphics cards. If you need the extra performance in a PC, not regarding the MacBook, we'll go ahead and talk about GPUs. So if you are going to buy a system that you maybe want to game on, or you want to be able to run some more accelerated tasks. So if you're doing any kind of 3D rendering, CAD work, any kind of video editing, stuff like that, where there's a lot of rendering capabilities of being able to take advantage of something like a dedicated GPU, then my recommendation is do not buy anything less than a 4050. I would probably say a 4060 or above is a great sweet spot. If you are in an engineering field, probably a 4070. You'll thank me later. It'll be a lot quicker. Also, you can go back in generations, but for the most part, I'd probably stay on one of those more current generations. That's going to give you that extra power that you're probably looking for. Now, let's go ahead and dive into how to find a good deal. Because honestly, that's probably the most important thing and what you're probably looking for here outside of the recommendation. Before we get to my recommendations, how I like to shop for laptops, especially for finding a solid deal, is basically find 3 models you like. Once you know those 3 models, then basically take those 3 models and go to all the major retailers. Start on Amazon, then go over to Newegg, then go to Micro Center, then go to Best Buy, Costco, and so on, and basically see what kind of deals or promotions they're running. Oftentimes, you'll see that one retailer actually has a deal that either you can price match to if it's not near you, or you can actually go ahead and just buy from them and save yourself a little bit of money. I'll also say, check the actual manufacturer's website. If you go to like Lenovo's store online, they always have really great deals that they're running to go ahead and get rid of some stock. So that's a great place to also check. And then the last thing to get a good deal is look for education discounts. A lot of times if you go to places like Best Buy or you go directly through Apple's website, if you go to their education store, you can save a lot of money. I know Apple offers at least $100 off all their laptops if you actually go ahead and buy through their education store. All you need is the email address that the school gave you. It just has to be a .edu email. They'll verify you as a student, and that's pretty much it. And you'll get like $100 off instantly, which sometimes can be the best deal out there available. And even other manufacturers do this too. So go ahead and look around and look up if there are any student discounts, just to go ahead and keep your eye out for that. Now that you have a pretty good idea of understanding your needs for a laptop, the specs you should be looking for, and how to find a good deal on one, well, what would I personally recommend? If I was entering college today, I think the absolute best laptop that you can buy is the 15-inch MacBook Air with 16 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigabyte SSD, and the M3 processor. That is the absolute best laptop I think there is right now available when it comes to base level productivity. It's going to have great battery life, a beautiful screen, and a great overall package to give you a perfect seamless experience. And if you happen to have an iPhone, it's going to work seamlessly with all of your other apps and be very easy to actually communicate between the two with having things like your Notes app synced, have your iCloud synced, and your photos. It's just a great overall user experience that I think you guys would really, really like. And that's probably what I would buy, and it's what most people are buying right now when it comes to actually going into college. If you don't want to buy an Apple device, let's say you happen to have an Android and you don't want to move over to the Apple ecosystem, then my personal recommendation would be the Microsoft Surface Laptop 7. I've been recently testing this out, and I gotta say it's one of the most impressive productivity level laptops out there on the market. It is incredibly thin and light, an absolutely beautiful screen. It's got great battery life, over 20 hours, and it's just a really solid machine with that new Snapdragon processor. If the Microsoft Surface Laptop 7 isn't powerful enough for you, but you still want the same form factor, there's a couple other options I would also consider, including the Dell XPS 15, because you can typically get this with a dedicated graphics card, which will take a little bit extra battery life off of it, but it will give you some extra performance. And it may even allow you to run that if you're in some kind of engineering field, because it's still gonna be thin and light, but because of that acceleration from that dedicated GPU, it should help you get away with that. Another thing you can also look at, there are also some more creative-centric laptops, including some from Asus. They have like their Procreate lineup, as well as MSI's Prestige lineup. Those are also great options. Or take a look at the Lenovo ThinkPad. This is a great option as well. These are very powerful and you can spec these up with a dedicated graphics card if you want to. Plenty of storage, plenty of RAM, and everything that you probably will need. But if you do want to actually get my recommendation for the perfect performance Ultrabook, go to the 14-inch MacBook Pro. I personally use this at the end of my career in college, and I gotta say, it's a very, very powerful unit. I have the M2 Pro unit, but I'd probably recommend getting the M3 Pro or M3 Max, depending on how much of the computational needs you'll be running into. Most people can get away with that M3 Pro, but if you do need the extra power, that M3 Max is available. It just gets a little pricey. Getting that spec'd up with at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, or maybe going with the 32, will be able to handle anything that you want to throw at it in a super small form factor, while still not sacrificing on a ton of battery life when you're not going to actually need that extra performance. When you're sitting in class taking notes, it's still going to actually just sip power and be great about that, and that's what I absolutely loved about having this machine. However, if you are in that engineering field and you do want to go ahead and make sure that you have the most power possible, or you want to actually game a little bit, go ahead and take a look at a few different options I have here. First up, I would probably say if you don't want to have, let's say, a ton of bulk carrying around, take a look at the Asus Zephyrus 14. It is very expensive, but it is one of the best laptops out there, or even the Razer Blade 14, which is also a great option when it comes to performance, as well as the size and compactness. It's kind of that Ultrabook form factor with a dedicated GPU, still able to game. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I think a lot of those can come with a 4070, which is super awesome, and it's gonna allow you to play any game that you want, as well as run any rendering task, which means if you're gonna do video production, or you're gonna do any kind of 3D modeling or CAD work, that's an awesome laptop. Or if you don't mind the bulk, I've loved using this Lenovo Pro 7i. It's a really solid laptop. It's got a great durability from what I can tell so far. Lenovo is also really good when it comes to serviceability. If you do need to fix anything or even upgrade this laptop, it's actually pretty upgradable. It's a great option, as well as I'll have a bunch of other options linked down below, along with everything I just discussed, so you guys can go ahead and check all those out. I'll make sure they're all sorted into categories just so it's easy to find. And if you happen to have any questions on what you should buy, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I will personally respond to you or somebody in the community will and help you find the perfect laptop for your needs. So if you have questions, check them out down there. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like and subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you guys in the next one.